Thanks for tuning into the Upstream Life Podcast. Join us as we dive into Scripture and tell real-life stories that we hope will educate, equip, inspire, and challenge you to live a life against the flow.
Get ready as we spend the next several weeks on our series, This Means War, where we discuss spiritual warfare and the different ways it impacts our daily lives. Let's dive in.
This Means War, Friend Edition. You ready for this?
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, so when the enemy attacks our friendships, we've been in this killer series, This Means War, where we're taking Ephesians 6 and talking about this enemy that Paul describes, this principality of power.
Mm-hmm.
And he's telling us that we have an enemy, and we thought after sharing all about this enemy, his job titles, his craftiness,
how we beat him,
all the time. So we also said, hey, let's talk about some of the areas that he comes against. So we've been doing this for weeks now, and today is friends. So I would just like to start with the scripture that we've been reading at the start of each of these series, just to remind us where our text is coming from. Paul says in Ephesians 6:10, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Today we're talking about the devil's schemes in our friendships. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Our struggle isn't against our friends. We talked about our struggles not being against our families and our marriages. It is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. We need to remember that we are fighting an enemy, not each other. I just wrote on here, babe, we are social beings. We are meant to be in relationships. Why does the enemy not want us to have good friends?
Well, because isolation is definitely a way to, I think more quickly destroy us.
Yeah. A little bit easier to fight somebody when they're all alone than when with all their buddies.
Yep.
How strong did you feel? Did you ever get picked on in school?
I did not.
Oh, I did all the time.
I really didn't get picked. Well, okay. I did have this one girl. I'm not going to name her name.
Yeah.
But I did have this one girl who kind of made my life a little complicated in like 5th grade.
Yeah.
But mostly it was like my brother that kind of got picked on. And I think that probably is a little bit of where the like justice, like
the social justice girl
comes in, because I would always defend him.
Yeah.
I'd just run my mouth and, whatever. But
I'll tell you this. Having been bullied, I would probably say, I'm very sad to admit this, I'd probably been the bully a couple of times.
Babe.
Hurt people. It's a true story. And I didn't have Jesus until I was 20, not to give excuses of things, but there's a few people that later in life I had to call up and be like, hey, just so you know, I was really, really mean to you and I'm sorry. But my whole point is, if you want to really hurt somebody, you got to get them away from their crowd.
Yeah.
When I'm rolling 10 deep with all my buddies, it's a little bit, a little more confidence. I feel a little stronger.
Mm-hmm.
I walk a little different. I might even smart back at the enemy a little bit. But if he can get you away, he can make you vulnerable, much easier for attack.
For sure.
So, this kind of plays into one of our themes, on the Upstream International side of doing more together, or you and I say all the time, we're stronger together. And the enemy knows that. So, when I thought about all the different areas that this scheming enemy can attack, we've got a little experience in him attacking friendships.
Yeah. And I think probably everybody can relate to that, right? Because the truth of the matter is, when you're dealing with people, you're going to have problems. And we are all a people. So we're all always a problem in some capacity or another.
Are you saying that sometimes we can even be the problem in friendships?
Yes, absolutely.
I was hoping you wouldn't say that, because I was thinking to myself, we've had a fair share of rocky friendships. Are we the common denominator?
Yes. No.
Maybe. Well, maybe.
The reality is we all have stuff. We all have stuff to work through, and
it's a two-way street.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah. What's one of the areas that you think maybe you contribute to issues in friendships?
Me?
Yeah.
Babe.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to put me under a bus?
You straight up said that sometimes we all have our part. I know for me, I sometimes don't speak up when I know I should. Like, what's really random about this guy that everybody seems to know as a talker and not a great listener, in all of the talking that I do, I don't necessarily like to hurt people's feelings
right, yeah,
or offend them. So I think in relationships, sometimes I'm able to just kind of give grace and mercy and let things slide and be like, oh, that's just humanity. And then the next thing I know, it's piled up.
Yeah, for sure.
And damage control is too hard.
I can see that. I think for me, one weakness that I have in friendships is I feel like I'm really good at being there for somebody like when they need me, like great at crisis mode. Like you're going through something, I will be your closest confidant, like for sure. But like on a day-to-day, like beyond that, I can really struggle to stay on top of friendships. Yep. And I think honestly, some of it is just the capacity of a given day. Like we're really busy and we obviously have a huge family and our own marriage and things like that. But yeah, I think that's a struggle that I have is, I, of course, like my heart for people is like, I would always want them to feel loved and cherished. And I'm sure that there's times where I probably leave people not feeling that way. In a day-to-day situation. Yeah. Definitely the person I think I would hope, at least I think like I'm the person that you can call me. Like if you've got something going on, I'll listen. I won't share your garbage. I'll, defend you and pray for you and definitely tell you when you're being an idiot and,
I see whatever. All that,
but yeah, I can tend to, kind of fall off a little bit when there's not a crisis.
Well, I can get on board with that too. And it's something that I actually really genuinely don't like about myself. And that is like, if I can't see you, it's an out of sight, out of mind thing. And when I say that, I don't even mean the way it comes across.
Yeah. It's not like you don't care.
It's not like I don't, I might think about these people all the time. There are friends that I have that I think about all the time. I have a brother out there that I think about all the time. I actually think about my own mom all the time, but you start getting a little distance between us. And I,
you fail
taking that step to shoot them a note or write them a letter or just checking on them sometimes goes away. I've tried really hard in these last few years to kind of get better at that because I had one of these situations where I was isolated and away from my friends and I needed their strength and their help when the enemy was coming against me. They were few and I couldn't necessarily blame anyone. Because, for us, we moved ourselves into the Caribbean Ocean, really far from all of our friends. And then you had new friends and new people to talk to. And anyways, yeah.
Yeah. I totally hear that.
I can jump on that one too.
I'm trying to think what else would be a negative thing for me.
Say one for me then, if it's easier for you to pick, and I'll pull one out of you.
For you?
Yeah.
One thing. Okay. So like, I think one thing that's super interesting about you is that you said it a little bit earlier, so I'm only repeating what you said, is that you're a really good talker.
Yeah.
And I think that can be in relationships, friendships, people can feel a little bit dominated in conversation.
Sure.
But the thing that's interesting about you is that you also can be an incredible listener and like,
yeah, when I choose to listen, I'm hearing you. Like I'm digesting it.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because you're, kind of both. Like you suck at listening and you're amazing at listening.
And I haven't served myself well on that either because I always have put myself in positions where people want me to be the talker. And I'm not saying like friendship wise, but not only is it something I'm already predisposed to.
Yeah. Then it's like you've had to do it for jobs.
I've also had to do it for jobs and or been put in situations where people are like, well, I'm coming to you for counsel or I'm looking for you to give me an answer.
Yeah.
So then it's really hard. It's hard to turn off.
Yeah. It is something you have to watch.
And I would say for myself too, it is a way to
avoid emotions sometimes.
Avoid emotions or insecurities. It's really easy to not embrace silence.
Yeah.
Which I know drives you nuts. That we don't talk when we go on long drives all the time.
It doesn't drive me nuts anymore.
But for me, it's also amazing because it's like, that's how comfortable our relationship is that I don't need to
talk to me for 14 hours.
Well, that's a mutual thing, but
no, it's not mutual.
Hey, we already talked about how the enemy comes against our marriages. They were on friendships.
It doesn't actually bother me that we don't talk in the road anymore, just because I think like over the years, I just learned like that's a really great windshield time for you. Yeah. And then I just do whatever else.
Yeah. You're serving me in that time.
Yeah. It doesn't bother me. Okay. So you let me say something. What would you say is a way where maybe I'm not a blessing in friendship?
I've got a slam dunk on, no, not a blessing. Babe. Okay. So you went to blessing.
No, I'm just saying not a blessing.
I was just going to say or like a vulnerable area for you.
Yeah. A vulnerable area. Yeah, let's call it that.
You are so trusting. So trusting. Yeah. Like, which is interesting to me because you have great discernment
So is it trusting or is it open, vulnerable?
I think,
or what is it?
I think,
because I don't necessarily fully trust people.
Yeah. Okay. So you could maybe put a better word to it. I'll just give you a scenario. A scenario would be, you could
don't use any names.
You could meet someone.
Yeah.
Have nothing but oodles and oodles of good to say about them, which kind of is that first step into getting into your friendship, and then learn out later down the line that they could be a complete crazy person.
Okay, I see. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I definitely give an instant benefit of the doubt, unless you give me like major creepy vibes.
Yeah.
And even in that, like I'll still deal. I'll come to you probably and talk to you about it or whatever. But yeah, that's true. I could see that.
Well, that plays into the second part is. Now, when I say these are both phenomenal qualities, that's what's interesting about them is they're double-edged swords sometimes when it comes to friendships. And that is forgiving. You're extremely forgiving. Like those things work really good in our marriage because we got to figure out how to make this thing work for the long haul no matter what. But where friendships, sometimes they can be too toxic that you have to let them go. So sometimes people get third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, 10th chances. And it's not that you can't still love somebody, but sometimes you need to distance yourself.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
Anyways,
I can see that.
You have any more for me? You want to pile it on since I gave you 2 for 1?
No, I don't think so. I think you've already nailed it. Like, I think that you are a really great friend. And I think that you obviously know like that you can tend to forget to keep up with people.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard too, just the nature of our life and kind of how we've lived, like we've kind of had these chunks and seasons where it's like for a really long time we were, in this ministry and then all of your life is consumed with this. And then you're in another one and it's all consumed with this. And of course, like we have people who have been with us, we've known for our entire marriage or whatever, and they're still a part of our life in some capacity. But I think sometimes seasons change and friendships change. And I don't think that that's bad, except if there's like, stuff that probably needs to get worked through to move on, even if you are still moving on, just to have it be clean and godly, but anyways,
absolutely. All right. So we picked on ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
Now let's get into some of these friendships, relationships that we've either seen from afar or been involved with. What are some areas where you can see the schemes of the devil, things that he can sew in to that friendship that you're like, wow, like, depending on our comfortability level and how deep we are as friends, is this safe to talk about? Or is this something that we take, we start talking about as soon as we get in the car together and we realize, oh, this is not going to end well.
I bet you it's different, obviously, for female friendships and male friendships, just because we operate completely differently.
Sure.
I would say one way that I've seen a lot with women is jealousy. And I actually have a friend, that does female friendships really well, and that's Lynette.
You named her.
Yeah.
Wow, shout out to Lynette.
I won't name somebody if it's bad, but I will name somebody if it's real good. Lynette is like probably the most cheerleading of your successes friend that I've known. Like she truly celebrates other people and their successes and she roots you on. And I think that sometimes we can tend to be like happy for somebody, but under the scene we're either jealous or
rooting for their failures sometimes.
Yeah, maybe, or just kind of, I don't have that or they don't deserve that. Or, like I think that there can be those things like we all need to check on our hearts in that. But she's definitely a friend that I've seen. And not even just the way she treats me. I mean, she's always been this way towards me, but just the way that I see her with other people and how she runs her life and her business and stuff like that. Like she's just really good at truly celebrating other people's wins. And I love that about her. It teaches me a lot too, because if I'm being totally honest, sometimes I can look at people and be like, well, why is that like that for them? And not for me, like I do have to check my own heart. And so she's one where, like, if you're really excited about something, you can tell her and she's going to be really excited with you. And there's zero, kind of underlying, weirdness. So I would say, I think jealousy is a big one for women. I think another thing for women is comparison. I think that kills a lot of friendships because, it's just a good tool of the enemy, like what somebody
Do you have
else.
some examples?
Yeah,
I mean obviously we in comparison everything.
What somebody else looks like, what their family does for a living, how much money they make, how much stuff they have, how much, how
their kids treat them, husbands treat them.
Yeah, like there's so many different things that you can either be jealous of or that you can be judgmental of. And I think that is a way that the enemy can really kind of get in there.
Yeah. So the enemy so jealousy, comparison, which kind of translates to jealousy, but you also said coming out of that judgment.
Yeah.
Right?
The opposite, maybe you're not jealous, but you're like, oh.
Yeah. I love that you started off too, though, even though it started off as kind of like a negative, but you also shared the positive, and that's like what makes a good friendship is rejoice. That's a quality of love, right? Is to rejoice with one another.
Yeah, and to really like have it be authentic.
Yeah.
And you can tell. Tell like when you tell one of your friends like, oh, like this happened, and they're like, oh, cool.
What's one of the ways?
And then you can be like, what? That's amazing. And then like you can just tell. I think my voice was probably really loud there. So sorry if I blew everyone's ear out, but. It probably was.
Well, you just said something that like instantly reminded me too of like, I got really like, I would pull back in relationships based on how they talked about other friends. You know what I mean? Like, well, didn't I just see you hanging out with them Sunday and you look like you were having a really good time, but now it's, Wednesday night and you're talking bad about them. So that's one that always gets me is gossip.
Gossip can for sure. And we're all guilty of it at some time to some degree.
Yep.
But obviously there are certain people that struggle in this area more than others.
Yeah, where they almost don't have anything to talk about but other people.
Yeah, and I think, I think that
I'm throwing a caution up here because I certainly don't want to exempt myself. Like I don't.
And I think that
but being aware of it is huge.
Yeah, it is. It is huge. That's one thing I love about our Callista is that she's the one of the most like so careful. Like you even mentioned somebody's name. She's like, I don't want to gossip. And you're like, well, no, like we're literally just saying that they went to the grocery store, like she's so careful about it, which I appreciate. And I don't know where that comes from. I should ask her.
Well, high school, maybe. I think she probably felt, I know she definitely had some moments where she felt the pain and hurt of gossip or other people talking.
Yeah. So those are some ways. So what about you? I mean, like obviously dude friendships are a bit different than girl friendships. Like what do you see as like a way where Satan can kind of, throw a wrench in things in like maybe your male friendships?
Yeah. So it's always hard for me to talk about this because I had such dysfunction in the world of friendships, even from my youth, right? Yeah. Because friendships are a very different category than family. But, growing up with a lack of family, I oftentimes would put those same needs
on friends
and requirements on friends. So like I'm 42 years old and just kind of starting to figure out like what is even the difference.
And
expectation wise. So, for me, it's expectation is one of the most destructive things, or where the enemy can sow in is I give a loyalty and I just grew up different, I grew up thinking like,
and your loyalty might look different than somebody else's.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. But I mean, I grew up seeing it ugly, right? Like I saw people go to jail for other people.
Yeah.
Like the whole snitches get stitches thing. Like, I'd die for your brother type. Like I saw those things actually get tested in the streets, and even more so in my family circle because my parents kept those kinds of friends, So it's like I had this dysfunctional understanding of friendship, but then I come into awareness or relationship with Christ, and I see what disciples are, and they have similarities. You know what I mean? But they have similarities with something that unifies them, which is Christ. And sometimes that can get me in trouble because I'm the first I live in such excess of what I ever imagined for my life that it's easy for me to give it away. Like, it's like, I want people to share in what God has given me. So to be honest with you, when I'm sitting in some of my friendships, one of the areas that the enemy is easy to sow in is just thinking like that person could never, care for me the way I care for them. Like just these weird
And,
things.
yeah,
Weird
yeah.
things. I know that's a little vulnerable,
That's all
but
right.
you asked me the question. So,
Yeah.
you know, something not as heavy that certainly gets us guys kind of ties into jealousy, but it's a little bit more of the
Alpha, like alpha syndrome, or
I've always like, I don't know who I am in that hierarchy, but I've never felt it personally.
okay.
Maybe a couple of times. But it wouldn't even have been on an alpha side. It would have just maybe been like a physical trait.
Yeah.
You know, there's certainly times where I'm like, oh, that guy's tall. Like, it'd be awesome to be tall. Or, you know, that guy's bigger than me. Or, you know, he's got great teeth. But
He's got great teeth.
Well, I know. But as far as like coming into I've always felt confident in any room that I've ever been in. Like, I didn't feel like. But
do you think that's true? I don't know. I'd kind of call you out on that one a little bit.
I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing there's probably situations.
Confident to a certain degree, but also insecure in other ways.
Well, that's what I mean. The insecurity would not necessarily, sometimes it's superficial insecurity, but I mean, as far as like deeper, I usually feel pretty secure in a room. But what I was going to say is FOMO is very real like amongst men in areas that men like, right? So like, you know, if somebody gets invited to go hunting.
Yeah. And you see all the pictures
and you don't get to go. Like, that's crushing.
Or like, you know, everybody's going snowboarding and
it's a perfect example. We've got some friends that are getting ready to. We've got some friends. We got some friends that are getting ready to go to Colorado. Now that doesn't jeopardize my friendship at all with them, but it's a certain FOMO, a little jealousy
and
action.
If FOMO is not kept in check, it can lead to jealousy, and then that's never a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, friendships can be tricky.
Well, they can be tricky. And that's what, so let's go back and we'll kind of recap a little bit. We know that there's an enemy out there.
Yep.
We know that the enemy wants us to be isolated. So he knows that friendships can strengthen us, right? Iron sharpening iron, keeping each other accountable, helping counsel each other, keeping marriages together. Think of how many friendships and relationships we had where people, you know, encourage us, you know, to keep going the extra mile, or others, you know, us encouraging others. So he sees that. Now, these might be items on where he wedges himself in, but what are kind of some of the effects that you can sometimes see, you know? So, you know, like where it causes that actual division and strife. Do you have any kind of examples of that? I'm thinking about real life scenarios sometimes where it's like,
I mean, I think it can just be little things, especially like if you hang out with people a lot, it's kind of like your family, you know, like you start really knowing the ins and outs, the uglies, the pretties, all of it. And I think that obviously we're all individuals. We're all different. And anytime that you're merging two human beings together, well, there's always going to be a potential for conflict and a potential for strife. So I'm not sure if you're asking me.
No, I'm saying, so we talked about some of these like things that we are all easy to relay with. What do you think the enemy's like surface, more the root thing is? So for me, obviously we talked about, you know, judging somebody or whatever. That can actually be pride, right? Like pride is more of the essence of it. Like, you know, they don't raise their kids the way I raise my kids, or critical spirit or whatever.
Or like they live such and such a way. And
yeah. You know, this sounds absolutely garbage to confess in front of people, but there's sometimes where you do judge people's walks even.
Yeah.
You know, or like the
I'm
way
sure people have judged ours. And
I know they have, because some of them are kind enough to share emails with me, or, you know, like let me know right to my face. So
it happens.
I know. And for me, some of that I think all circles back to pride. You know, you have to be pretty prideful in a friendship to think that you've actually walked
somebody
in your
else's
friend's shoes.
Yeah.
You know, behind closed doors, sometimes we don't know what's going on. You know, I have bought vehicles before to fill a void, you know, where it's like, do I need this vehicle? No, but this vehicle right now helps me feel sane so that I can keep working on, you know, marriages or friendships or whatever. Like sometimes God says the greatest gift.
And you're
that
saying
we
like
have,
maybe people from the outside would be like, I guess I don't understand why you're saying that one.
Well, I'm saying what I love so much about Christ is that he was willing to lower himself to become a human, to ultimately be able to have compassion on us, to empathize with us. This is the same thing that we're supposed to have with our friends. is this understanding that, as their friend, I only get to know so much about them. My hopes are that they are transparent with me and I can kind of carry some of that with them. But sometimes we may make judgments towards people not really knowing what their day-to-day is
what
like.
they're really fighting.
And when I say cars, we've served the Lord our whole life, and it's not supposed to be something that, is supposed to have glitz and glam. And I know sometimes people have called out what vehicles you drive. I remember coming back from Haiti and we looked at our bills and we're like, we can't afford a vehicle that breaks down.
Yeah.
And we thought that a leasing option or a vehicle that had a strong warranty would be better than another. And sometimes those judgments come against friendships.
Well, and what's difficult about that is a lot of times people don't know, like, behind the scenes what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Like, we know people and we have also experienced somebody giving us a vehicle. So somebody might look at the situation and be like, I can't believe that they're doing this, not realizing, like, behind the scenes how this maybe came to be. And I think, like, we're all guilty of that.
Right.
And I think we all need to be checking our motives and checking our hearts in all of the relationships that we're in, because like you said, like, you never truly know, like, what it all looks like under the surface and behind the scenes, I mean, even in you and me, like, you know me better than probably anyone else. I know you probably better than anyone else, but I still don't know what it's like to be Joe.
Exactly.
And you still don't know what it's like to be Sammy. And I think that so many times we lack, like, the mercy and grace that we're required to have when we say that we're Christians. Like, we lack that. And I think, if we could just practice being that ourselves more for other people, man, the world would be so nice.
That's what I mean. It's so hard sometimes when Christianity gets a bad rap because it really is what we've done with it. But the message itself is, you think about how much we go before God asking for forgiveness and grace and mercy. And then we turn right around and aren't able to offer that to other people who are just like us. Fall short on any, and we never know what path they're on. And we don't know what they went through that day that was what encouraged them to make a particular decision. And I bring all this up because when we talk about friendships, it's a relationship, just like a marriage or any other relationship, it requires a particular thing. And that's time, time spent with each other. I wrote down one of the biggest things that the enemy can use against our friendships is just making us too busy to actually hang out with each other, or so busy that our time spent with each other, we just never really get below surface.
Yeah, I think that is one thing, I think it is a way that the enemy can also work, is just, relationships that aren't authentic. I mean, I think we've, not that every relationship that you are in deserves to know the full magnitude of your life.
Right, sure.
I don't believe that to be true.
Yeah, there's almost categories for friends.
But like everybody should have at least somebody that does know as much as the full weight as possible. I just think that that's really important to have, like, real true friendships where you're actually growing together, where you're actually being, like you said, just sharpening each other and making each other better and being challenged. And, like, sure, would I like you to always be, obviously you're my best friend, right? Like, would I like you to always just be like candy coated and wonderful? Sure. That'd probably be really good for my ego and my heart. But at the same time, I'm like, I also need you to be like, hey, babe, like, probably need to work
Tough
on this.
love.
Probably quit saying that word so much, or whatever other thing that I deal with.
Well, babe, I think, we've been talking about This Means War, talking about all the different ways that the enemy tries to knock us off from our number one goal. And that is just loving the Lord with all of our heart, mind, and soul, pursuing him, and knowing that there's a lot of parts to the body, and friendships and marriages and raising kids and where we live and all those types of things are areas where that light needs to shine. But as Paul reminds us, that there is an authority that is the darkness of this world.
Yeah, that wants us isolated.
Yeah, that wants to keep us isolated.
Yeah, I think one thing, I don't know if this stood out to you at all in the marriage book that we're doing, but like basically at the beginning of it, which I actually remember this from a marriage book like forever ago, before dealing with anything, it just deals with you, And I think, like it said in the beginning of our book, to just like draw a circle around yourself and realize like your responsibility is to change everything in that circle, the person in that circle. And I think if we can approach friendships that way too, and realize like that we have our own things to work on, that we have ways in which that we can be a better friend, ways in which that we can be a worse friend. And if we are all, willing to do that, our friendships would be that much more rich, and the enemy, like if we're truly emulating like what Jesus says, right? And like the fruits of the spirit and what love is and all those things. And we're approaching each other with patience and love and not keeping a record of wrongs. Obviously you can forgive. That doesn't mean that you have to be in situations that are like, continually toxic or abusive. Like I'm not saying that. But if we are to really just emulate the way Christ lived, like, and do that intentionally, like our friendships are going to be that much better. We also have to be aware, like you said, like that the enemy is trying to destroy friendships, is trying to isolate us, is trying to keep, because if he can get us away from friendships and isolated, he can also get us away from Jesus. And I think we've seen evidence of that in our life too, like where we've pulled away from friends or pulled away from the body or pulled away from things through just our own lives and stress and busyness and
we can become weak,
hurt. And then, like we can become weakened. And it's something I think we have to be really cautious of.
I love that. I love the way you brought it full circle. And I think we can kind of end on that. Just as we began, we said, hey, sometimes there's a common denominator. We're picking on ourselves a little bit, but the reality is,
well, we're not perfect.
Any great blessing to any relationship, marriage, with your kids, with friends, whatever it is, working on you is always the best and first and foremost thing. The stronger your relationship is with God, the stronger your relationship with others can be, because you're learning from the very essence of love. That's what I love about that book too. It basically says you are incapable of loving. You're incapable of keeping a friendship. You're incapable of keeping your marriage going.
At least not
apart from God's love.
Yeah, at least not. I like added to that sentence because it like kind of bothered me a little, because I'm like, okay, we are capable for a very, for like a little bit, like we can power through some things. Like we can probably maintain friendships, maintain a marriage, to a certain degree, but to have like real, true, long lasting, sustainable relationships, like we can't do that all on our own. Not even kind of.
Amen to that.
I mean, is it bad that I modified the book?
No, you can modify the book.
I added like a little thing.
I could see you modifying.
You know me, I'm a little literal when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Well, babe, as it pertains to our friendships, remember James 4:7 says, submit yourselves then to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. We need to be reminded that he is a toothless enemy, a toothless lion. Although he has a great roar and he is meant to be formidable and feared because of what it is that he tries to come against.
He's already devoured, babe.
He's under Christ's feet, and we fight from victory and not for it, even in our friendship.
That's right.